Hello lecturer and all classmates. Today we will present about Unit 9, Evaluating Inferences, Assumption and other relevant arguments. Our group members are Khon, Srainit, Sakadadevi, Sirairat and me. In this unit, we're gonna look at 5 important points, which are implicit assumption, assuming if the reasons are true, the conclusion is. Other relevant consideration, overall argument evaluation and presenting a well-argued case, and last but not least, the summary.
Implicit assumptions. Before going further, I would like to give you the definition of the word implicit. Implicit means something written is not directly stated. However, when they write implicitly, clues are given, and readers can figure out what the author is trying to say. Let me give you an example to make it clearer. Do you remember the story of the grasshopper and the ant? So, let's take it as an example. The grasshopper laughed at the ant and said, "Stop your silly work and have fun with me." "No," said the ant. "I'm gathering food for winter. You must do that too." Yes, you probably said that I think the grasshopper is lazy rather than say that he is lazy, because the story doesn't say he is. However, I can use the clue in the story that he is lazy. He used the word silly. The grasshopper used the word silly. That means that he does not want to do anything. Of course, sometimes it might not be easy to know what is assumed. In these cases, general strategies is what we should attribute to arguments, explanations, and so on. We observe the assumption which seem likely in the context, make sense of what is said, or seem necessary to make the reasoning as strong as possible. Let's see an example how general rules work with an easy question. If the world's climate is getting warmer, we should find that some of the ice at both the North and the South Pole is melting at an unusual high rate. If the ice is melting, we should see its effects in the rising of the sea level. That is the evidence that this level is increasing, so the world's climate must be getting warmer. The problem with this argument is that there could be another plausible explanation for this rising of the sea levels. But people that supporting this claim will say that this is the only plausible explanation and they don't care too much about the details. The point is that the assumption made the reasoning as strong as possible, makes sense in context, and it seems reasonable to attribute it. I think this is all about implicit assumptions.
Chapter, what we are going to do is to learn to evaluate inferences and conclusions by using assumptions and other relevant information. In this point, we are going to discuss sections 9.2, which is assuming if the reasons are true, the conclusion is, or so is the conclusions. So to evaluate inferences, you can add assumptions in the argument by follows the pattern. If the reasons are true, so is the conclusions. And this pattern also follow what we call deductive valid argument. And to get to know more about deductive valid argument, we may take a look at next slides. To make it simple, deductive valid argument is a kind of argument saying that when the premises are true, the conclusions must be true too, and it takes the form that if A is true and if A lead to B, then B must be also true. At the moment, it was mentioned that we can evaluate inferences by adding assumptions into arguments and follow the patterns above to evaluate inferences. But we need to know as well that the strategy for attributing assumption to argument is less helpful than fishing. For example, If you have an argument saying that some people solve their unemployment problem by great ingenuity in searching for a job or by willingness to work for less, so all the unemployed could do this. And if we turn it into an assumption by saying if people have solved their unemployment problem by great ingenuity in searching for a job or by willingness to work for less, then all the unemployed could do this. So even though this pattern could help you in analyzing what is being accused, by just adding assumption, we could see that it does not greatly advance the process of evaluating inference, because nothing make the original arguments any stronger, and it did not add any reasons to this. So to summarize all the point, is that any inference, however illogical, can be converted into a deductively valid one by just adding the hypothetical assumption if the reasons are true, so is the conclusion. But this does not strengthen the argument at all.
Now moving on to the next part, which is about other relevant considerations. Normally, working out what someone is assuming is often quite creative, because to evaluate the assumption they made, whether it's right or wrong, you have to be imaginative about it, or you have to do further research into their views. In this time, thinking of other considerations that are relevant to an argument is certainly where critical thinking becomes the critical creative thinking. So, to be clear, let's see the example. We have the reason 1, which says, most prospective parents would prefer to have sons. The conclusion for this reason is, if people can choose the sex of their child, it is likely that there will eventually be more males than females in the population. This could reduce the serious social problems. So, the conclusion for this reason is, therefore, we should prohibit the use of techniques which enable people to choose the sex of their children. So what do you think of this argument? Is it persuasive? Of course, this inference is convincing. However, if we try to think of other relevant considerations or to think outside the box, we will get a different view. First, freedom of choice is very important in some societies, and they prefer to give people the choice and then deal with any resulting social problems later on. Second, if parents can choose the sex of their child, this may reduce the tendency to go on having children until parents have sons or daughters they want. This could reduce the number of unwanted children and might also reduce the rate of population growth. We can see that these two reasons contradict to the idea of banning techniques. However, there might be other considerations that agree with the argument, such as they might be very expensive, or there might be religious arguments against them as it is interfering with God's will. So these two support the idea of banning the technique. After all, you can judge the argument wisely whether to support or to argue with such inference on basis of these relevant considerations that are mentioned. In short, if you are asked to respond to an argument like this, you first need to be clear with what it says by thinking around or doing research around. Second, respond to its basic reasons, whether to challenge or agree with the inference. Third, ask yourself how well the considerations support the conclusion. By doing so, you can make a good judgment to the inference.